Welcome, everybody, to the newest episode of Amateur Theory. Today is an interesting one because the way we found this movie is we literally went to Rotten Tomatoes' list of worst movies of all time, and this was listed as the worst movie. So if you're unfamiliar with Rotten Tomatoes, it's an aggregate of a lot of scores. So what this movie means is that 0 of the reviews it got were good reviews. They were all bad. And there are multiple movies like this on Rotten Tomatoes, but this had the most bad reviews of all the 0%. So that's where we get this. And the movie is Ballistic, Ecks versus Sever.
Which is either the greatest movie title of all time or the worst movie title of all time.
One of those.
I don't know which.
Totally random, but fun fact. Before the movie came out, they released a video game based on the movie for the Game Boy Advance, and it was actually really well received.
Yeah, I first heard of the game actually before the movie. I found out about this movie after reading about the game, because the game's one of the very few first-person shooters released on the Game Boy Advance.
I was looking at like screenshots. It looked pretty good for a Game Boy title, honestly. I was kind of impressed. But the movie, is unlike the game, was not received well. And I guess we can start going.
Nobody likes this movie.
I guess let's go over the plot.
Okay, wait. Could you actually tell me what the plot to this movie was? Do you remember any plot details or why things happened in the way they did? Could you name me a single motivation or consequence because of this certain action? Like,
all right. Here's my best go at it. A secret agent, an ex-secret agent of the DIA, which is a shadow government. It's the government, but not the government. It's a shadow government. I'm assuming it's based on the CIA. I don't think there's actually a DIA. But anyway, an ex-DIA agent, or actually an ex-Chinese agent, ex-DIA agent, kidnaps the head of the DIA's presumable son, kidnaps him, and then just goes on a bit of a murderous rampage, I guess, throughout Canada.
Just goes to Vancouver and shoots up a bunch of people.
So yeah, this is the American government agency, but all this is taking place in Canada, in Vancouver, and luckily there's no international incident that arises from this, despite corpses and explosions everywhere. But anyway, that's just a little nitpick. They steal the son, and then another ex-DIA agent is contacted by not the shadow government, but by the real government. So now we have the shadow government, the real government, and then this rogue kidnapper agent. And the reason that the agent is hired is actually, I guess, is to get the kidnapper agent. But really, all he wants the kidnapper agent to tell him where his wife is, because he thought she was dead, but turns out she actually isn't. I'm already losing the thread here. I'm trying my best.
You lost me like a minute ago.
But okay. But then the agent, it turns out that the real government agent who just wants to find his wife teams up with the kidnapper agent, and it turns out that the kidnapper agent actually didn't kidnap the ex-DIA son. It was actually the real government spy's son, who's played by Antonio Banderas, is the real government spy. I'll start saying names. And Lucy Liu is the kidnapper agent. So it turns out that Lucy Liu kidnapped the child. It's unclear of why she did that at first, but it's revealed later that she did it to save him, because there's a secret machine in his bloodstream that was given to him in Germany that the head of the DIA put into his bloodstream to cause heart attacks with people. And it turns out that the Antonio Banderas' wife was married to the DIA guy the whole time. So now Lucy Liu and Antonio Banderas started fighting, but then they realized they're on the same team. So then they go and fight the DIA, the shadow government. And in doing so, they come out victorious after killing a lot of people, exploding a lot of buildings, and they take the secret weapon robot out of the child into the bad guy, and they give him a heart attack, and the day is saved.
Someone's going to have a stroke listening to that.
Honestly, the kind of vibe I got from this movie was very similar to the Transformers sequels. Have you ever seen any of those? In that it's just a convoluted plot, kind of, not really important. It's really just an excuse for a lot of explosions on screen, a lot of firefights, and that's really what this movie is. Like, everything else, plot-wise, is really an afterthought.
Well, it's an exposition dump, then an action scene, and then just exposition, and then an action scene, and it's impossible to care about any of this, so you're mostly just bored the whole time. No, I missed a lot of details on my watch through. Like, I went back and read through the Wikipedia synopsis, and I was like, oh, that's what was going on. Because things were just happening, and I didn't realize how or why we had gotten to this point.
So I tried really hard to pay attention, which is why I was able to recount the plot to you. But it was exhausting, and I had to take multiple breaks. I couldn't watch this in one sitting. I had to watch 10 minutes, kind of figure out what was happening, and then go to the next 10-minute block, and that's how I watched the movie. Yeah, this movie is just so nothing. So all the motivation, it just doesn't really make any sense, right?
Things just happen
Lucy
because
Liu's
they have to happen.
Yeah, no, but Lucy Liu's character. Let's take the plot for face value. Lucy Liu wants to save this boy from a machine that's in his heart. That is the stated reason that you don't learn about till the end. That is that she kidnapped the child. So if that is the reason, then why does she keep on calling the DIA agent? And it sounds like he's like, you know what I want, or something. And then she kills a bunch of people. There was one scene in particular where there was a big firefight, right? And they tried to capture her, but she just murked them all. She's just a one-man army, just kills everybody. And then she gets away. But then Antonio Banderas tells his boss, who is not connected to the DIA. These people have nothing to do with the kid. But he tells his boss, hey, I have a feeling she's going to be back. And he's like, are you sure? And then
what do you know?
Shoots him in the head. So this is a person that has nothing to do with the child or anything. It's a completely unrelated character. She just came back solely for the purpose of just killing this man, which is all she did. She just came back to kill that one man. And then they have a running scene with Antonio Banderas. It's all just nonsensical. There was no reason to do that.
Nonsensical. It's honestly, I find this movie hard to talk about just because I don't know, it's just a big messy yarn ball. It's impossible to untangle. And I guess the story is there mostly just to get to an action set piece, but we don't know what's at stake or what's going on, or we don't care about anything, so the action's just inevitably boring and not even that well directed. You can tell this because this is 2002.
Yeah,
there was that just period after the Matrix came out where everyone wanted to be the Matrix, so we just have action scenes where lots of explosions, lots of people shooting guns, and then every now and then it'll just slow down for no reason. Someone will be shooting a gun, but it'll be in slow motion, them shooting a gun. Oh boy. And then...
Did this movie ever make you laugh? I chuckled at a couple parts, actually.
There were a few.
It's not overly funny, like you said. It's mostly boring, but there's a couple moments.
No. The funniest scene, well, the most entertaining scene is probably the shootout in the Vancouver, mall or whatever. Just because I I didn't understand why it started happening, but Lucy Liu just starts shooting a bunch of like cops or whatever, and then the scene just kind of kept on going, and that's what started making me laugh. But then there's one shot which is probably the most memorable thing in this movie. She like shoots a rocket launcher up at a sniper, and he like falls down, and the camera actually like does an overhead thing where it follows the guy falling down, but it just keeps on going like the whole way, just him sailing, slowly falling down. And it's kind of an interesting shot, but it made me laugh. But then he like crashes into a car, and a wheel like pops off and hits another person in the face.
Yeah, some of the action bits made me laugh, just how ridiculous they were. The final firefight, I thought it was hilarious how they kept on blowing up the train. Yeah. Like, I didn't understand the purpose. Like, they weren't killing anybody with these explosives, but they just placed bombs everywhere. And so they were just constantly going off. And so you had the cool guys don't look at explosions thing like 40 times. Like, explosion, walk off, shoot some more, explosion. And it was just nonstop. So that made me chuckle. Actually, the thing that made me laugh the most, though, one particular scene. Do you remember when the villain made the one guy put the gun to his head?
Oh, yeah.
He's like, pull the trigger. And then I guess the guy tries to double cross him. So he tries to shoot him instead. But then it turns out the gun is reversed. So the bullet comes out of the back of the gun. So he'd actually shot himself in the face anyway, which is just such a... Who has that on them? Like, I'm going to give him my reverse secret gun.
Yeah, what if the guy was like, fuck it, I'll actually just kill myself. And then, like, the bullet goes out in the other way. He's like, oh, well, isn't this awkward?
Or even if he just had I guess, I don't know. I'm not much of a gun person. So I guess, do you always put the gun in front of your face? Like, what if you just held the gun, like, right here? Like, next to your head? Then you would have been okay. It would just happen to be, again, maybe that's just the way you hold guns. I'm not an expert on that, but yeah, and I mean, these sound kind of funny talking about it, but just like Wicker Man, the funny bits could probably be mailed down to a even shorter YouTube clip than the Wicker Man YouTube clip. Like, you probably need like 40 seconds to get. And they're not even that funny out of context. Yeah, they're mostly funny just because it's so dumb.
Yeah, because it's surrounded by so much dumb. Like, everything is dumb. And then at some point, your brain just kind of snaps at, like, the fact that you're, like, watching this. And you'll chuckle. And then that, endorphin rush from that slight bit of laughter goes away. And then you sink back into this hollow misery. Just mind-numbingly boring. Like, by the end of the film, like, we get to that last action set piece, like, there's all these explosions and gunshots, and I was so bored. Like, I was zoning out. Like, I was thinking about lots of other things. It's like, oh shit, well, what do I have to do this weekend? It's like, what should I eat for lunch? Like, and then maybe like the noise will stop for a second, and I'll be like, oh yeah, movie. What happens? And And usually I try to pay attention to films. Like, I'm not the type of person that like checks their phone like while watching a movie or anything. I like giving it my full attention, but this one just really like tested my patience there.
Another thing that's kind of funny, I liked how it was directed by Chaos with a K.
Well,
which is a moniker, but
yeah, the director's, I believe, from Thailand.
Yeah. And he directed a Tekken movie after this.
Oh, he did?
Yeah. I haven't seen it, but I saw that. So I have a question for you. Since this is, whenever we watch a really bad movie, we usually come back and say, how does it compare to the other bad movies? Yeah. Is this the new worst one? And in case you're catching up, the current title for, and we watched a lot of bad movies on this podcast. Yeah. Current title goes The Last Airbender as the worst
reigning champions Last Airbender.
Do you think this is better or worse than that? It's a tough one.
Yeah, I know.
I think that Last Airbender is worse. But
Last Airbender is probably just a worse overall film. The Last Airbender is worse in like more interesting ways, I think. Like that movie's
this is more generic.
This movie is so very generic. Like it's just cliches and action scenes and like just done like not well. Like a lot of the film is like it's not like bafflingly bad, like something like The Room.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so generically bland.
Yeah.
Like everything in this movie has been done before and just done like way better. This is like just an amalgamation of like action cliches and then just poorly executed or just put together. Whereas in The Last Airbender, like I think The Last Airbender's just bad in more interesting ways. And I think even like the background, the fact that it's based on like something that's so beloved and just completely like just pushes it into the mud. The Last Airbender is probably the worst, the more like bad film, but it's more interesting, I think. Whereas this, this is just boring. Like at the end of the day, that's all I can say. Like I fell asleep watching.
You're misremembering of how boring Last Airbender was.
Yeah, that maybe
super boring. The big difference between the two to me, the reason why I give this one the edge, is because in Last Airbender is also exposition dump to action sequence, but the action sequences were not action. Like there was no action in the action sequences. Whereas this, at the very least, you get to see like a rocket come out and like explode a person, right? And out of context, maybe the stakes aren't there, but at least that's a little, to me, it's more interesting to watch than like people doing a dance and a rock moving around. So that's kind of where I give this the edge. But this is a very, very boring, just bland movie. I was kind of hoping from the worst movie ever that it would be more obviously bad, but it really is just, I actually think this is better than, I don't remember which Transformers, because I haven't seen all the Transformers sequels, but there was one I watched.
Well, I don't like any of the Transformers movies, so.
I think the first one's okay. I didn't mind it, but it might have been like the fourth one or something. I don't know. But that was basically this, in that the plot was completely convoluted, didn't make any sense, and there was all this action sequences. But the difference is that Optimus Prime is way less charming than Antonio Banderas, is one. And then two, it was a way longer movie. It was like 2.5 hours compared to this 9-minute movie.
Try to be epics. And yeah, this is only an hour and a half long. Thank God.
Yeah.
No, if this was like a 2-hour film, I might not have finished it. I don't know. Well, out of a sense of duty, I probably would have, but
you wouldn't have liked it.
I would have had a big frowny face on the whole time.
No, I actually, because my expectations were so low, I actually came out of this, ironically, disappointed that it wasn't more bad.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It was
very generic. It was just extremely generic action movie. It had every cliche in the book, and it was just thrown together, and it's like, oh, well.
Yeah, it's not as so bad it's good, and it's not like terrible in like really stand out like bizarre ways. It's just very bland, very boring.
That's why it's weird to me that this would be considered the worst movie on Rotten Tomatoes list.
Well,
like, I know I've seen worse movies than this.
Yeah, it just has the biggest amount of reviews that where people didn't recommend it. No one recommended it. I mean, it might have been a case where everyone was just like, meh. Like, it's not like a 1 out of 10. It's like a 4 out of 10, maybe. But if everyone gives it a 4 out of 10, that's still a 0%.
That's true. And yeah, that's an interesting one, I guess. Maybe in the future, I'm going to choose a different list for the worst movie list. I don't know if I trust Rotten Tomatoes after this one. I'm suspicious of the rest of the list now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because that's just the worst movies. It's not so bad they're good. It's like no, they're just bad. And this I is a forgettable movie. Like I I watched it very recently, and I'm just having trouble even remembering basic basic elements of the film, like just like the order of the scenes, or like who did why, or like how the sequences went. Like I I bet in a week or two, like this will have like completely vanished from my mind. It's so forgettable. Whereas I'd say something like The Last Airbender, I still think about that movie every now and then. There are
It haunts you.
sequences that stand out to me.
That's fair. I actually ended up kind of. I think Antonio Banderas is a decent-ish actor. I didn't mind his performance, honestly.
No, he's not terrible in this movie. He's just he's not really given much of a character. But he is a good actor. Like that just comes across. Whereas I cannot say the same thing for Lucy Liu.
Yeah, Lucy Liu is not her best performance in this movie.
I think she phoned it in. This was just to pay the bills. I don't even know if she knew what was going on when they filmed this.
Yeah, well, she would just say lines, but she just had a singular expression the whole movie. Kind of like well, she had like two modes. There was like normal mode, which was like a half smirk, kind of like, I don't know, I'm a badass agent. And then there was I'm a mother who's very sad mode. And those were the two things of this movie.
I don't even I don't remember the mother being sad mode at all. I just remember an expressionless face.
Maybe it just put us the words. She said she was sad, and it was because her child died.
I missed that. I don't even remember.
Really? That was her whole motivation. She wanted to save this child because her child was killed by the main baddie. You know what else was kind of funny? So Antonio Banderas.
So zoned out.
So Antonio Banderas, right? The reason he thought that his wife was dead was because the main bad guy, and I'm forgetting the bad guy's name. I don't know any of the characters' names. I've been calling them the actors' names. I don't know the actors.
Well, I know
right,
Antonio
Ecks.
Banderas is Ecks and Lucy Liu is Sever.
Right, it's true. They let us know in the most obvious way. How have I been messing this up? So Ecks is the reason he thinks that his wife is dead is because our main villain stages a death for them, where like he blows up their house or something.
He blows up their car, I think.
No. So that's what's funny. He blows up their house, and that's why that's why Ecks thinks that his wife is dead. He pulled the exact same trick on the wife. So the wife thinks that Ecks is dead because he blew up their car. And even though this is a world with cell phones, somehow both of them were just fooled and never thought to look into it or anything. They were just like, well, that's it. And then right after his death is staged, the woman, ex-wife, immediately just marries the bad guy. And it's revealed like later, as soon as Ecks comes back, she's like, I never loved him. And it's like, well, then why did you marry him? Like, why?
I'm assuming she was forced to. I'm going to be charitable and say that we can assume that fact. Or maybe not. Maybe that's not explained. Maybe she did just marry him for the hell of it. I don't know. I wouldn't put it past this movie.
It was just strange. And then his whole motivation was that he was in love with her, so he wanted to get rid of his competition. But he didn't seem that broken up when she left him at the end.
Oh, was that his motivation?
That's what it was. A stated motivation. Ecks literally has a moment where he's like, "I knew he always loved you." She's like, "Yeah." That's it. But at the end, when she's like, "I don't like you anymore," he doesn't seem all that broken up about it, as long as he can get his killer robot machine out of the boy. Which, again, he had to do in order to smuggle into the United States, even though he is ostensibly the government, but the shadow government, not the real government. But it is the real government because he has full control over government agencies, but he still has to smuggle this because
Yeah, and it's not well. Okay, so the weapon works like it gives you a heart attack or something. Like
Yeah.
something gets shot into you, and then
Right.
like you push a button and it gives you a heart attack. It's like, you could just shoot someone. Like
I mean,
real bullets do.
I guess if you wanted to do like a assassination, and you wanted it so no one could figure out how it was done, maybe.
But
it didn't seem to take Lucy Liu that long to figure out that there was a robot.
yeah, and
So I don't
it
know
still
how-
leaves a mark because she kills the bad guy in the end, like using the weapon, and she pushes a button, and you see like a CGI thing that shows like inside like some drill or whatever, like
That's true.
inserting something. So if he gets autopsied, they'd still find something. They'd find this.
This is not the type of movie you should drill too deep into. I wonder if they made it like complex on purpose for the purpose of like they don't want people to figure out what's going on. Like let's just distract them from this poorly written movie and see if we can just razzle dazzle them with some more explosions.
No, no, that would mean someone had some intent that they tried to pull and actually succeeded at it, which it did not happen in this movie. It's just a mess, I think.
Well, I'm having trouble pulling out more conversation out of this nothing of a movie. So I think I've said pretty much everything I have to say about it.
Yeah, it's just. Oh, well, do you remember the score? Just that
No.
generic, like hard rock techno music that was everywhere in like the late '90s, early 2000s.
I believe you when you tell me that is what the score was, but literally, like I didn't even think about it for a second.
No, it's like an Unreal Tournament soundtrack. If you tried to make it sound as worse as possible, it's
Okay. Well, I guess I can barely even remember the title of the movie. That's how forgettable this movie. I mean, it has such a weird title.
Oh, I remember the
But it's
title,
just such-
Ballistic Ecks versus Sever. The title's the best part about the movie.
Well, all right. I guess final thing is just don't watch it.
No.
This movie doesn't matter. Ignore it.
Yeah, it's just not worth anyone's time.
Yep. And that'll be it for today. If you're listening to us on YouTube, give us a like, subscribe, ring the bell, give us a comment, all the things. If you're listening to us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, give us a follow. I think that's all you can do there. But until next time.
I'm so sorry, everybody.